What's up everybody, it's Travis here from Travis.media. Today I'm going to be showing you how to set up and use Cloud Firestore as your React backend. Now when you're building apps with React or really any front-end framework or library or whatever, you often need a backend to store your data. Unless you're just pulling from an API or pushing to an API, you need somewhere to store that. So for me, that's always been a question. What do I do? Do I use MySQL, MariaDB? Do I need to use AWS? Do I use a hosted solution? Well, Cloud Firestore is a wonderful option. It's free, it's very easy to set up, and you can use it for your portfolio projects, your demo projects, even your production projects. So we're gonna be using a React to-do app today, and we're gonna be integrating Firebase into that. So I'm gonna show you how to configure it, how to use it. It's also gonna be a lesson in learning to read documentation, which is very important for developers and DevOps engineers. And before we get started, let me just make this distinction in case you don't know what Cloud Firestore is. So Cloud Firestore is not a relational database. So relational databases, you have a table, you have columns, and you insert rows in that database. Cloud Firestore is a NoSQL database. And what it does is it has collections, and within these collections, there are documents. These documents are like JSON objects. They're key value pairs, and they have the same data types you're used to: strings, numbers, booleans, arrays. And this kind of NoSQL database works great with front-end frameworks and libraries. So if you're building out some portfolio projects and you need an easy backend, a free backend to handle your data, use Cloud Firestore. And by the end of this video, you'll know how to do that. So grab a cup of coffee, turn off your phone, let's build this app together. So the first thing you want to do here is clone the repo. So I'll have a link to this below, but it's in my GitHub repositories. It's called Firestore React CRUD app. And make sure you clone the main branch. Now I didn't create this initial application. It was created by a Safdar Jamal. He created this CRUD app, and he created it to be used with the local browser, like to save the data as a local item in your browser. What we're gonna do is we're gonna swap that with Firebase. So make sure you star his repo, give him credit where credit's due. I didn't want to build this from scratch, so I found a really nice React CRUD app, and I just tweaked it for our purposes. So once you pull down this code base, you'll want to do an npm install. So open your code up, go to your terminal, npm install, and make sure you install the dependencies. Once that's complete, you can run the app with npm run start. And it'll bring you to this login page. The email and password that's already there is what works. It's hard-coded. So click login to log into the application, and you get this successfully logged in pop-up box. This is what makes this app so clean for me. It has nice visuals. So you can add an employee. So click add an employee, fill in the information. You can edit an employee, change some value, and you can delete an employee. But I took out the backend. So if you do that, it's not gonna take. Just wanted to mention that. And then you can log out. So click log out, confirm it, and you are logged out of the application. So that's how it works. We're gonna replace that backend. So again, he used the local storage in the browser to save this data. I took that out. I put some to-dos in there to replace it with Firebase. So if you look at the code, don't get overwhelmed here. We'll talk about all of it. But essentially you have, let me close this, a number of components. You have a login and a logout component. Don't worry about that. We're going to do that at the end. You have an app component, which decides whether you go to the dashboard or the login component. And that's based on whether you're authenticated or not. Hence, we had to log in when we started the app. Once we log in, instead of going to the login component, we go to the dashboard component. And then you have a number of components here. We just need to look at the index file. And here you see we're just storing state, like the employees, the selected employee is adding, is editing. We're just storing state. I have a to-do here in each one of what we're going to be adding. Handle edit, handle delete. And anytime you see this swal.fire, these are these pop-up confirmations that say, are you sure you want to delete this? And provides the spinning thing and everything that makes the app look nice. So right here, you'll have a warning. Are you sure you want to delete the file? And then down here, delete successful, that kind of thing. So anytime you see that, just think pop-ups. And then finally, you have your component down here. So if you're not adding or editing, it's going to load the header and it's going to load the table. If you're adding, it's going to load the add component. If you're editing, it's going to load the edit component. Pretty straightforward. That's all you need to know. The other components are just those, the add, edit, header, and table component. Again, we'll go through all that. But we need to get Firebase set up. So again, now that you've looked at the code, if you log in, you'll see your table component. If you click add employee, you see your add component. If you click the edit button, you see your edit component. And if you click delete, you get that swal.fire, which stands for suite alert. So it's a suite alert package. It's a React package for this kind of alerts. And so when you click delete, you're going to see that pop up. Are you sure you won't be able to revert this? Yes to delete it, no to cancel. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and set up Firebase. So go to firebase.google.com/docs/Firestore. And you'll have to log in your Google account. Everybody has a Google account. I just logged into one of mine. And we're going to start here. So here's the documentation for Cloud Firestore, not the real-time database, but the Cloud Firestore. And here's the introduction. You can read about what it is. We've already talked about that. So we're going to move down to the Get Started section. And from here, we're going to go up to the top right and click on Go to Console. So go to the console. And you're going to create a new project. So click Add Project. Let's call it Employee Database, or whatever you want to call it. Click Continue. I don't want to enable Google Analytics because this is just for testing. Click Create Project, and it's going to create your project. And my new project is ready. Click Continue. And it takes me inside my project. So the first thing you want to do is go to Build and Firestore Database. Click Create Database to create a new database in your project. And you want to be in test mode. So start out in test mode. This gives you 30 days before you have to update your security rules. You can extend this as long as you want, but just start in test mode. Click Next and select a location. I'm going to go down and select one closest to me, which is Northern Virginia. Select a location closest to you and click Enable. And let's start a small collection manually to begin with. So click Start Collection. And the collection we're going to use is employees, because we're going to have a database of employees. And then we're going to add our first document. So if you look at our sample data that's in this project, you can find it under Data in Index. We have an ID, which we don't need in Firebase. They'll generate one. We have a first name, last name, email, salary, and date. So let's add that. Let's add 2 entries just so we can get started. So click Auto ID. It'll generate an ID. Then do first name. I'm going to put Bob. Add a field, last name, Smith. Email, bob@example.com. Salary, let's say Bob makes $62,000 a year. And the date, now we could do a date format. I don't want to get into all of that in this video. I want to keep it simple. So let's just do a string. And let's say 2023-01-05. And click Save. Now we have a collection called Employees. And inside of that collection is going to be documents to represent each individual employee. So let's add one more real quick. Click Add Document, Auto ID. And the date is 2023-05, let's say 01. And click Save. Now we have 2 employees in our database. Good start. So we've created our database. We've added a little test data. The next thing we want to do is go to Project Overview. We need to add an app to our project so that we can take that data and add it to our app, to connect this database to our app. So right here where it says Get Started by adding Firebase to your app, we don't want iOS, we don't want Android, we want web. So click Web. App nickname, let's just say Employee Management. And register app. Next, we'll need to do an npm install Firebase, but you actually don't have to do that because I've included it already. Here's Firebase. So that's done. And then you have this configuration. So we need to add this configuration to our project. So let's copy that. And in our project, we're going to create a folder under source called config. And I'm going to create a new file in there called firestore.js. And I'm going to paste that information in. Now all of this data here is sensitive, so we're going to create in the root of the project an env file, .env, and we're going to transfer the sensitive data to this env file to keep it out of our main project and to keep it from committing to the Git repo. So I'm going to grab all this data and I'm going to copy it over here. And I'm going to set up my environment variables. To do this in a create React app, which is what this is, all of the variables have to start with React app. So it'd be something like React app API key. And I'm just going to copy this React app part 5 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And fill in the rest. Auth domain and project ID and storage bucket. Messaging sender ID and app ID. Again, it has to have React app on the front of it for it to recognize. It's the way create React app is set up. And these are all going to have equal signs. And after that, I'm just going to paste the values without the quotes. So for API key, I would just grab this, copy it, and paste it here. And I'm not going to make you watch me, so I'll go ahead and do that off camera. So I filled that information in my env file. Now here, I just need to reference the variables. And to do that, you have to put process.env and then the name of your variable. So React app API key, and just do that for all of them. And I'll be back in a minute. All right, so when you're done, it should look like this. Process.env and the name of your variable. And it's going to pull that from the env file. And then in your git ignore, make sure that .env is ignored. So when you commit your code, you don't commit that env file. Great, now let's go to our documentation and see if we're doing all of this correct. I was just following what they told me, so continue to console. And let's go back to the getting started page. So create a cloud Firestore database. We already did that. Set up your development environment, npm install firebase. We already did that. You'll need to import both. Don't worry about that either. So if we go down to initialize cloud Firestore, this is what we need to look at. So we've imported the initialize app. We have the Firebase configuration, and we've initialized Firebase. But there's 2 more things here. One, we have to import get Firestore, and then we have to initialize Cloud Firestore and get a reference to the service. So we need to add that. So let's grab this import and paste that as another import to import that function. And then we're going to use that function down here to initialize Cloud Firestore and get a reference to the service. Then we'll be able to use this DB in all of our other files. So paste that there. So again, I'm just following the documentation. I'm adding everything I need. So save that, and let's see what's next. So here, we should be good. Here's add data, here's read data, secure your data, all of that. So let's actually do this to make sure that we've set all of the variables correctly and we've imported it correctly. Let's grab this import and put it in our index.js just to test and see if we have any errors when we fire our app up. So go to components, dashboard, index.js. Just add this at the top. This imports the collection and git docs functions from Firestore. So save that and let's see if it works. So npm run start. Do we have any errors? We don't have any errors. So if you get any errors there, you might have misspelled an environment variable when you were typing them out. So make sure you check that. But it looks like I'm good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this progress to a branch. So if you want to look at my code at that point, you can compare the two. So let's stop this. Let's create a new branch. Git checkout B. And I'm going to say 1 added Firestore config. And also what I need to do is, let's take this env file and copy and paste it. And let's create one that's not hidden, like an env sample. And let's remove all of these values. That way, if somebody's using this application, they'll be able to see not my API key, but the fact that I'm referencing them from this env file. They'll know, hey, change this env sample to env and then set it up like that. So it's just a helper for people using this project. So save that. And I'm going to check out this new branch. And let's check my changes out, env sample. Let's add that. index, we don't need to add this. You can remove that because we were just testing to make sure everything was good. So env sample and then Firestore, there's nothing sensitive here, so let's commit that. All right, added Firestore, commit, and publish branch. Now my repository should have a new branch. Click view all branches and it should show me my new branch that someone can go in and check out. So click on that and you should be able to go in and make sure your code's the same as mine if you're having any issues. Great, so what do we want to do next? So next, we want to take this application, we want to get rid of all this sample data and we want to pull the data from the Firestore database. So let's go to our code, close these files up. And let's go to index.js. So you see here, we're importing employees data, which is right here. We're just importing that manually. So let's go to index and just remove that because we don't want to import fake data. We want to import from our database. And then we want to come to this to-do. So this to-do says create get employees function and call it here. So let's create a get employees function. So const get employees. I'm going to do async. And inside of this, we're going to use some Firebase code here to pull data. So let's go back to our getting started guide. And let's go over here where it says read data and click on get data. Let's see how to do this. So initialize Cloud Firestore. We've done that. Here's some example data. Get a document. You can get a single document. You can get multiple documents from a collection, or you can get all documents in a collection. This is what we want. And there's various languages here. There's Swift, Dart, Go, Node.js, which is not React, so we don't need that. We're going to stick with the Web version 9 modular. So the first thing, let's import the collection and getDocs functions. Well, collection isn't a function, but we'll import these helpers. And then let's grab the code. Let's just take this code and work with it. So right here where it says get employees, let's paste that in. And here it says get docs from a collection. And remember DB, if we go back to our config, the DB is the reference to the service. So that's the first argument. But then we need to put the collection name, which for us is employees. So that's going to get this query snapshot. And then we can loop through it and console log that information. So let's try it out. Let's go down to useEffect and call that function. Get employees. UseEffect is called when this component renders. So it'll be called when the page loads. Click save. And since this is React, we also need to deal with state. So up here, they're using useState. Employees is going to be the variable that holds the data, and setEmployees is going to update that data. So here they're using the old employees data, the hard-coded employees that we got rid of. So let's get rid of that. And when we load this data, we want to update the state as well. So right here, after this query is made, we need to do set employees, and it's going to be employees. Now this isn't going to work because we're just console logging out everything, but let's just put it for now. So save that. So let's run it, npm run start, and we should be able to check our console and see an error. Uh-oh. So it says DB is not defined. So let's go back. We didn't pull in that DB reference. So let's do import DB from, and we need to reference that Firebase or Firestore file where we initiated that DB. So // and it was in config /Firestore. That should bring in DB. And we got another error. It says DB is not exported from Firestore. So we forgot to export this. So let's go back to this file, and all we have to do here is just export it. We were creating that reference, but we weren't exporting it. So save that. And we have another error, which is I didn't put the call on the function. So save that. Let's try it now. And if we check our app, we should have the information in the console. So remember, we're consoling the ID because the ID is not actually in this data object. So we're calling the ID and we're calling the rest of the data. So if we look here, we have two documents and we have the ID for both, and then we have all of the values. So that looks good, but we don't need to print it to the console. We actually need to get that information and display it on our page. So under this, let's do const employees equals query snapshot. And then what do we want to do? Well, here's a good lesson in reading documentation. So go back to the documentation, and I'm just going to open a new page so I don't lose this. And since we're using query snapshot, whenever you're using built-in things like this, there are always methods to it. There's always stuff you can do with that information. So you're getting this query snapshot. How do you get the documents in that snapshot? So a good thing to do is just go to the search and type in query snapshot. And here's query snapshot JavaScript SDK API reference. Let's check that out. And let's see if we can find some kind of method to call to get the docs. And if we scroll down, we'll see constructors, and then we'll see properties. So look at this. There's a property of this query snapshot called docs. And what it is an array of all the documents in the query snapshot. That's exactly what we need. We need an array, and then we need to map through it and list it on the page. So that's perfect. There's also other properties: empty, metadata, query, size, if you need to know the number of documents. A lot of helpful stuff here. It's always good to go in and check out the API reference and things that you can do with these values. So let's go back and do query snapshot.docs.map, and then we'll do doc and this arrow function. And we need to do the same thing that was down here, the doc ID and the doc data. So let's do some parentheses, an object, and then we want to do ID is doc.id, and then we can just spread the rest of the values. So doc.data. So because we're using that docs method, it's going to create the array for us, and we're going to store it in this employees variable. And from there, we can use set employees. So remember before, they were setting that to that static data, this hard-coded data. Now we're going to fill that state with our retrieved data. So set employees to this array of employees in our database. So save that, and we should be good with pulling data. So let's go back, and our page loads, and now we have the data. Now remember, this project came from this other guy's repo. So he has everything rigged up for us. We didn't have to go in and map this stuff out. If you scroll down, you'll see that we're loading a header component. So if we open this up, here's our header, employee management software, and a table component. If we go to table component, all of this is set up for us. It maps through employees, and it creates a table, and it just creates a row each time it maps through. So all of that's set up for us. We're focused on Firebase here, not really React. So if I reload, what do I got? I pull my data. And see how it says no employees first? That's because it's waiting to pull data. We don't want it to say no employees. Ideally, we want it to have like a spinner, which we could set up, but it's going to make this video way too long if we do. But you can download, it's like React spinners, some package like that. It's very easy, and you can put it there instead. But I'm going to erase no employees and save it. Now it'll just show kind of like a blank page until it loads. And I think that's good. We're now pulling our data. So let me push that to GitHub. Git checkout to added get employees functionality. Going to switch to that branch, and I'll commit these changes. So index, we made some changes there. Stage that. Table, we just changed this one thing. Stage that. Firestore, we added the export. Stage that. And commit. Added get employees functionality. Commit and publish branch. So if you need to check your code at this point, go check that branch out. All right, so we're pulling data. The next thing we want to do, we want to be able to add an employee to the list. And that takes place in our add component. So if we go to add, we look here, we have all of our variables like first name, last name, email. This is going to be the state that we're going to update. We have a handle add function that happens when you submit the form. So let's run the app. So you click add employee, we get this new form. When you submit the form, it calls this handle add function. First, it's going to throw an error if one of the fields is blank. And in the form, we're setting the state for each value. So we should just be able to create a new employee with those state values. We're going to push the new employee to the employee list. We're going to save it to Firebase, which we're going to do here. We're going to set the state with those new employees, and then the set is adding just makes that pop-up go away. So is adding false makes the pop-up go away. So all we need to do here is add the add functionality. So how do we do that? Well, we go to our documentation. So back over here, let's go to Add and Manage Data. Open that up, click on Add Data, and then we scroll down. We've initialized Cloud Firestore, set a document to create or overwrite a document. We don't need to do that. Add a document, here we go. And we need to use the add doc method because that allows Cloud Firestore to auto-generate an ID for you, which we want Cloud Firestore to do. We don't want to do that. We're going to let them handle it. So we're going to use this add doc method. So to do that, we need to import collection and then the add doc function. So let's do that first. Put that at the top. We also need to pull in that DB reference. So go back to index. We'll just copy it from there. Put that under that. And then we're just going to copy this code and work with it. So right here under to do, just paste that in. And since this is an await call, let's go up here by handle add and add an async to this function. Wrap that E. And all we need to do here, I'm going to get rid of this console.log. Await add doc, the collection, the DB reference, and then, of course, employees is our collection. And then just erase this and put new employee because we already have this JSON here ready to go. And these values came from our state that we set down here in the form. So set salary, set email, set date. That's all set. This employee is ready to go. We just need to add new employee because the key and values are going to be ready for us to push to Firestore. And actually, no, we need to spread that. So we need to spread those values out accordingly. So let's save that. And actually, let's put this in a try catch since this is a post function. Let's do a try catch. And we don't need this reference because we don't need to get any data back. So let's take that and just add it here. And then catch, let's do console.log error. We'll just log the error. Erase that. And that makes me feel a little safer. So save that. Erase this comment. And let's try it out. And go to add employee. Let's try a new employee. So let's say Bill Johnson. Bill at example.com. Salary, let's say he makes $29,000. He's struggling. And let's pick a date, like the 8th, and click add. Let's see what happens. So we get this check that says Bill was added. And there's Bill, but there's no ID. Why is there no ID? Because we're just updating the state with Bill's information. But that information is being pushed to the database, and there an ID is auto-generated. So we're not getting that information back from the database. So you don't see it here, but if I reload the page, it's going to pull that data again, and it's going to get the ID. So how do we make it update instantly? Well, we can call the getEmployees function again. If you go back to index, you remember we created this getEmployees function. When we call that, it pulls a fresh pool of employees from that database. So after we add, we need to call that function. But that function doesn't exist in this component. So if you go back to index, you can actually pass that function to the component so that we can call it. So if you go down here to the return area, you'll see that here's the add component. And you'll see up here is our getEmployees function. So copy that. Come down to the add component and do getEmployees equals getEmployees. That's going to pass that function to that component. So save that. We're going to go back to our add and make sure we're pulling it in up here. So getEmployees. So we're pulling that in. We're sending it to it and we're pulling it in. And then down here, we can just add it after all this happens. GetEmployees, save. So we add a document. The state is updated. This pop-up goes away, and then we refresh that list of employees. Let's try it out. So let me refresh the page. Go to add employee. Let's do Donna Summers. Donna at example.com. She makes $50,000. And pick a date. And now when we click add, it should add it to the database, but it should also update the page so that the ID is showing. So add. Added, and there it is. Donna is here. Here's her ID. So with that, we have our add functionality working. Let me go ahead and commit that so you can compare your code. So let's commit this add file. And in index, the get employees we passed along. So let's commit that as well, or stage that as well. And then up here, add employee functionality. And commit and publish branch. Great. Now what do we want to do next? Well, next, let's set up the delete functionality. I think that'll be easy. So let's go back to our code and figure out where that's at. So here's index. And here's handle delete. So handle delete is called when the delete button is pressed. So if we go back here, there's this delete button. When the delete button is pressed, this handle delete is called, and the ID is passed with it. So if we go to table, and then this delete button, handle delete is called, the ID is passed along with it. And in index, here it is. So the first thing that happens is this pop-up comes that says, are you sure you want to delete it? And if you confirm that, then it's going to run this code here. Now this code here gets that particular employee, and then we're going to delete that from the database. And then there's going to be this success pop-up to let us know that. And we're going to get the new list of employees here in the state and update the state with that new list. So here where it says to do delete document, let's figure out how to delete documents. So right here, delete data, this should tell us. And first we have to import doc and delete doc. So let's put that at the top. Actually, we can just add it here. Doc and delete doc. And DB is already referenced. So let's grab that code. And it's just a one-liner. So right here, let's paste that in. Get rid of the await because that's not going to work here using a then. We'll just do without it. And here's the reference to DB, and we have two values here. So the first one is employees, because that's the collection. The second one is the ID. So we need to know the ID of the document we're deleting. So let's put ID. Remember, that's being passed in, so we can use that directly. And that's going to delete our doc. So let's try it out. Click Save, run your app, and let's delete Bob. So come up here, click Delete. Are you sure? Click Yes, delete it. And Bob's gone. Now let's check our database. It updated in the state that time. We didn't have to call that get employees function again. We just did it in the state. So let's go to our actual database and make sure that's gone. We should have 3 employees only. Yes, and that worked. Great, that was pretty easy. All right, so let's commit that and then let's move on to the edit functionality. Git checkout, delete doc, create that branch. Then we're going to push the index file changes. Delete dot functionality, commit that, and publish branch. That's going to be branch 4, but I think you are not going to have any trouble with that one. Finally, we need to look at the edit function. So let's go back to index, and there's one here called handle edit that's called, but we need to actually come to the component to figure out what's going on. So if we scroll down, here's the edit component, edit employee, and when this form is called, the handle update function is called. So we need to go look at that, handle update. So if one of the fields is blank, throw an error. And again, since all these values are being saved to state, we can just reference the employee here and it'll be all set up for us. And we need to do an edit. And then of course the state is updated and the is editing goes to false and we go back to the main page. So update document, let's do that. So let's go back to our documentation and add data. Let's do add data. I think it's there. Let me scroll down. So set a document. I think this is what we need. To create or overwrite a single document, use the set methods. Yeah, let's do that. There are some other options here, like update a document to only update a particular value in that document, but we're just going to overwrite the whole thing. That way we don't have to keep up with what's there and what's not there. So let's import doc and set doc. Let's grab that. So up here at the top of edit, let's put that. And then we need a reference to our DB. So let's grab that from another file. Put that here. And then let's copy this code. So this code says set doc. Well, we'll look at it in a minute. Copy that. So down here at the to-do, copy that and paste it. And let's make this async. And here we have DB, we need to put employees. And again, we can put the ID here because we have that information here. And we want to get rid of this static data and spread in our employee so that it overwrites everything. Not just what we changed, but everything. And let's save that and try it out. So let's run the app. Now let's try to edit Bill's salary. It's way low. Let's bump him up to 40,000 and click update. Updated, and Bill, it still says 29,000. Let's refresh. And it's updated. So we need to do the same thing here where we call that get employees function to refresh our data. So let's go back to index down here where it says is editing, and we have the edit component. Let's send this get employees along so that we can use it. And then back in our edit component, let's include it. Let's pull it in. And after all of that, let's just call get employees to get a fresh list. So save it. Let's try to update them again. Let's refresh the page. Go to edit. Let's bump him up to 43,000. Update, and let's see if it works real time. So update. Updated, and 43. So that's good to go as well. And by the way, this isn't perfect. If this was a production app, you'd probably want to change some things to better handle all of the state and things like that. Right now, we're just having fun with it. So we have our CRUD functionality. We can create, we can read, we can update, and we can delete. Awesome. Let's click Logout to go back to the logout screen or the login screen. And let's address this. How do we do authentication with Firestore? Now, this is one of the good things about Firestore. It has authentication built in, and there's a wide range of options. We're just going to deal with username and password for now, but you can have it send you a one-time code. You can use Google, Twitter, Facebook, OAuth, whatever, and I'll show you right here. So let's go back to our database. Let's go to Build and Authentication. Click Get Started. And look at all these options. You have email, password, phone, anonymous, Google, Facebook, GitHub, Apple, Twitter, Yahoo, whatever you want. It's that easy. So what we're going to do is just email and password, which is not my favorite thing. It's not safe at all, especially with WebAuthn and biometrics and all that stuff at the forefront today. But we're going to use it for our personal project. So click email and password, and you want to enable that and click save. That's going to enable that option for our app. Now, how do we implement this? Well, let's go back to our documentation. Let's go up to authentication and click on web and find password authentication. See how important it is to be able to read documentation. So before you begin, add Firebase, create a password-based account. I think, let's go back and go to users, and let's create a user just so I can test this out. So add user, I'm going to put Travis, add travis.media, and I'm going to do a simple password, my password, never use that. Click add user. All right, so we have a user that we can log into, but we have to implement this functionality. So how do we do it? Well, they have a built-in function called sign in with email and password. Really, it's that easy. They handle all of the security and everything in the backend. So grab this import statement. We're going to import the get auth and the sign in with email and password function. Copy that, and we're going to go to our login component. So here, see where he hard codes the email and password? That's fine because that's what it's intended to do. But we're going to remove that. We're going to remove this hard-coded state, which is why we didn't have to enter anything to begin with, because it's already in the state. And here we have this. If email equals admin email, so that's hard-coded as well. If those all match, then some kind of pop-ups are going to happen. We don't even need to worry about that. So this is the login form. We're going to just redo this whole thing. So let's go right under here, and let's grab our code. So grab all of this. Paste that here, put it in line, and look how easy this is. I don't need any user credential information. I can actually remove that. And I'm just going to actually do another try catch and say try the sign in with email and password. And then I'll do, if there's an error, I'm actually not going to put any of that right here. So we're going to try to call this function, and there are 3 parameters: auth, which we get right here, and then email and password. Well, thankfully, that's already in place down here. We set email, we set password, the state's already set up, so we should have that information as well. This should work. Like, I should be able to run it right now and it work. But we're going to do this. So how they had it set up was if the email and password match, all of that goes well, then you get this pop-up that's like successfully logged in. So let's copy that part of it. That's good. Let's take that, cut it out, and put it right after our successful login, if that goes well. If it doesn't go well, let's throw this error that they had set up. So catch in here, we'll just do that. And let me remove this. And I think that should work. So Firebase makes it that easy. Sign in with email and password, supply the arguments, finished. All we did was add these nice fancy pop-ups confirming that things went well or things didn't go well. So let's save that. And we actually didn't import those functions. So let's go back and get that. We didn't even pull that in. Let's put that at the top and save it. And I think we're good. So what's happening also, here's a local storage set item. Let's take that out because we're not saving to local storage. But what's happening is there's this set is authenticated. Remember when we first logged in? If you go to the app component, app-index.js, it checks whether you're authenticated or not. If you're authenticated, you go to the dashboard. If not, you go to the login screen. So what's going on here in this login is we're setting the state. Set is authenticated to true if everything works out. So all of this technically should work. Now, if this is a production app, you should probably do something else, like have some observer in your whole app checking for that. But we're not getting into that again. We're just having fun. But this should work. It saves the state that I'm authenticated. So let's save it. Let's try it out. Hey, this is Travis jumping in here from the future. So this function is not going to detect the error correctly unless we await this sign in with email and password command. So make sure you put await here, and then on the handle login, add async. And then in a couple of minutes, when you add this register functionality, make sure you do it there too, await. And this will all be reflected in the final code. And that's all I have to say. Back to the video. Here's my login screen. I'm just going to try the user that I've already created. Remember, I created one for Travis at travis.media. And then I think I put my password. If I hit login, let's see what happens. It's going to take a minute because we're talking to Firebase. Successfully logged in. And there's my employees. It all worked out. So how do we log out? Well, let's go back to our documentation. This is how you sign in. How do you sign out? Here. To sign out a user, call sign out. So we need get auth and sign out from, actually, let's just copy this whole thing. Copy that. Go to your log out component, which is pretty much the same thing. Here's the button that says log out. It calls the handle logout function, which is here. So let's go up to the top, paste this in, paste in the import, and then let's take the code and put it directly under this. Work with that first. So here's the get auth call, and then it's this, sign out auth, then do something else. So let's take our confirmation. So are you logging out? Are you sure you want to log out? And then set the is authenticated to false, which will set our state to not authenticated, which will send us back to the login screen. So let's grab this whole code here. And if everything goes well, which is here, we're going to call that. And if some error happens, we're just going to do a console.log error. And we put the whole thing in the wrong place. Let's grab this, cut it, and then that needs to go inside of handle logout. Let's put that inside of the handle logout function. Save it, and now this should work as well. Let's try it out. Let's log in again. Travis at travis.media. My password. Now when we click this log out button, it should log us out, set the state to not authenticated. So click log out. Are you sure you want to log out? Yes. As soon as we click yes, it's going to log us out. So yes. And we're logged out. So we have a login, we have a log out, but how do we register a new user? I don't want to have to put that in manually. I want people to be able to check my app out. So what we're going to do is kind of a half job here just to show you how the register works. We're going to put a register button right beside this login and use the same form. Not a good practice. You should create a new component and have some routes that take you to a register route, but I don't want to get into all that. We're already getting late on this video. So let's create a button right beside this. Let's go to our login. Down at the bottom where this input is here, let's just copy that, paste a new one beside it. Put some margin, margin left. Let's do 12 pixels just to separate the two buttons. And then let's add a name value here. Name equals login. And then here for the value, let's do register. And then we're going to add name equals register. Adding this name will allow us to see which one we've actually clicked. So save that. And then just to test that, let's come up here and do a if. And to check what the name is of a button, we can put document.activeElement.name. And actually, we don't need an if. Let's just do console.log and make sure we're getting that right value. So now we have a register button. It shouldn't be the same color. Let's go back down and make it background color black. There it is, black. And if we check our console out, let's refresh. We can click register and we see register here. And by the way, that worked with no values in the field. So that's something you'd have to check if this is a production app. But again, we're just having fun. Refresh. Now if we click login, we should see login down here. Awesome. So let's refresh, go back, and we'll just set up something like this. If document.activeElement.name equals, let's do 3, login. If we're doing a login, let's actually move this up here so we can use it for both. We're going to do this whole try catch to log the person in. And then we can do else if document.activeElement.name equals register. We're going to register the person. Well, how do we register? We look at the docs. So up here at the top, it's a function called create user with email and password. So let's take that function, add that to the top of our code. Then we'll grab this code without the auth part because we already have that. And we'll do another try catch. And here under try, we'll paste this. And we don't have any fun pop-ups for this. You can go up here to these SWAL examples and add your own, but I'm not going to do it. But here, create user with email and password. I'm going to delete the then. And here, let me remove that. And in our catch, I'm just going to put console.log error. And we already have our auth email and password values. So let's save that. Actually, we do need some kind of pop-up and state update here so that it says that we're authenticated and it sends us into the dashboard. So let's just copy what was up here. So this SWAL fire here. Let's copy that. And let's paste it down here after the create user. Paste that in. And we'll put set authenticated as true. They registered. Let's go ahead and log them in. And then instead of successfully logged in, let's say successfully registered and logged in. Save. And that should give us the same experience. So let's go back to our app, refresh, and try this out. So here, instead of logging in, I'm going to create a new user. Let's do travisraj@gmail.com. And then I'm just going to, again, put my password and click register. Register, and we're spinning. Successfully registered and logged in. And here are my employees. I am logged in. Now we can go back to our database. And if I refresh, I should see a new user added. There it is, travisraj@gmail.com, created, signed in. Your app is banging. So that's it for me today. I'm not going to take it any further because this video is already long, but let me just show you one thing. If you go to Google here, if you want to integrate like Google OAuth so that you can use your Google login for this app, it's so easy. Look at this. You want a Google pop-up window? Sign in with pop-up. That's a function. That's it. That's all you have to do. You're using the Google Auth provider. You can do the same thing with Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, all of those. Have at it. Have fun with this app. One other thing to note is that if I refresh, I lose my authentication. So Firebase has a way to handle that. I think it's with some observability functionality that it has, but you can dig into that. But right now you have a pretty cool app. I hope you learned a lot about Firebase, how to talk to the database, how to authenticate users, and be sure to use it in your personal projects as well. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, consider clicking that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.